We're going to take a look at Old Schema ROM, Fantasy OSR. Now, Fantasy OSR probably not be anything that will surprise you if you've been playing fantasy roleplay for any amount of time. You're going to have magical gear, and you're going to enter into a perilous underworld in order to collect loot. Now, the monsters you're going to meet are goblins and undead, and later on mythical beasts, and finally dragons. Again, typical OSR. You have your helmet, whether or not it's +1, 2, or 3. Your magical armor, which, +1, 2, or 3, and you have that shield, which is no shield, +1, 2, or 3. A lot of the sword, 1, 2, or 3. You start with your gear and a set of food and basic luck, and those I call your aces. Your aces you spend to give you advantages as you move through the underworld. Of moving through an underworld, starting from the top burrows through the deepest mines, over to the tombs of the kings, and finally through the corridor of the fiends and shadow realms. If you ever get down to the ocean floor in one of your adventures, well, you certainly are braver than I am. And as you get lower, the hazards, of course, get more dangerous. Typical OSR. You have 5 character classes: Celebrant, Dwarf, Elf, Sellsword, and Wizard. Each have a unique advantage in the game tables. They all have hit points. Celebrants start with 9 and get another 6 per level. The Sellsword is the largest. He would be your warrior class. He has 12 hit points, and he gets another 8 per level. That lowly wizard, we always cheat him, don't we? Has 7 hit points and 4 more per level. Level 1 to level 8. Now, you can certainly play beyond that, and you probably will want to play beyond that to collect enough loot to build a serious castle to be contending for any sort of power on the external world. Currency is typical gold piece and silver piece that you're going to find in typical OSR. The concept of the game mechanics is based on 2 dice rolls. You're going to roll a first D6 and a second D6. That first D6 is going to be a broad category of event, such as delving or obstacles, an ambush or skirmish, and then fights to the death, and finally calamity ensues on that roll of 6. And that second D-roll is a clarifying event. For instance, that 2, if that was a delving event, would be a pitfall. If that same event was an obstacle, it would have resulted in secret doors. But where it is now, it's 5. It's a 2 to the death. So our goblins, who are the underworld creature that we start off entering and facing, have put us in a pinned situation in the underworld. Now, you're not going to find a D20 rolling over and over and over. You and your 5 party members trying to kill the 15 goblins. You're running through a statistical, almost nightmare of dice rolls and tables. But instead, you're going to have that to the death roll be modified by your magic sword, +1, +2, +3. And as you do not complete it, you will either go to another round in solo play or pass off the event roll to the next player in sequence. How do we handle spells? Well, there are a wealth of spells in OSR. As most grognards would tell you, there's a wealth of spells, but there aren't too many useful spells. Or, should be said, some are more useful than others. There's a whole bunch of spells that in most roleplay games, but they're so unique, require such a special set of circumstances. If you're not using some sort of hybrid mechanics of mana, you're never going to get to the bottom of them. Instead, the spells here are in broad classifications that I call aspects. The spells modify the first die and second die of the events.